The battle which followed inspired a post-war feature film. The British commander was Admiral Sir Christopher Cradock, under orders from London.
It appears that Gneisenau and Scharnhorst are working across to South America. Be prepared to meet them in company.
Cradock had one ship that could outgun Speye's fleet, but she was slow and had been left behind. Now Cradock raced towards enemy ships better armed than his. He had ignored his own rule of thumb.
A naval officer should never let his boat go faster than his brain.
I immediately ordered Scharnhorst and Gneisenau to go full steam ahead, and within 15 minutes I was racing against heavy seas at 20 knots and came to lie parallel with him.
Cradock's ships were no match for Speye's.
Good Hope and Monmouth were obviously in distress. Monmouth yawed off to starboard, burning furiously. There was a terrible explosion on Good Hope between her mainmast and her after funnel. The gust of flames reached a height of over 200 feet, lighting up a cloud of debris that was flung still higher in the air.
"1,600 British sailors were lost. It was Britain's worst naval defeat for 250 years. The global war was going Germany's way.
It is only when you get to see and realize what India is, that she is the strength and the greatness of England. It is only then that you feel that every nerve a man may strain, every energy he may put forward, cannot be devoted to a nobler purpose than keeping tight the cords that hold India to ourselves.
Britain's empire and trading network was the single biggest resource she brought to the war. And India was at the heart of it. The cords were never tighter. All the more reason for Germany to want them cut. These slender lines on the map were now the focus of intense study in the British and German admiralties, in the chart rooms of warships. Fingers traced the vital shipping lanes, through the Suez Canal, around South Africa's Cape. Minds pondered how to protect them, how to sever them. And one of the sharpest minds was on the bridge of the German cruiser Emden. A month after she left Admiral Speye's squadron, Captain Karl von Müller steered her into the Bay of Bengal. In 1932, the Germans made a feature film about his odyssey.
He had an indescribable power over the entire crew. He never gave orders, he just expressed a wish. From the moment he took command of the ship, he never left the bridge again. This is where he stood, slept, sat, studied the maps. This is where he wanted to be, stand or fall.
The Emden sometimes rigged a dummy funnel to look like a British cruiser.
A large steamer appeared dead ahead, and thinking we were an English man of war, was so overjoyed at our presence that she hoisted a huge British flag. I'd like to have seen the look on her captain's face when we hoisted our flag and invited him most graciously to tarry with us a while.
Captain Müller became famous for taking all crew and passengers safely onto the Emden before sinking their ship.
We always allowed them time to collect and take with them their personal possessions. They usually devoted most of this time to making certain that their precious supply of whiskey was not wasted on the fishes.
Müller regularly released his grateful captives. Such was the Emden's impact that the British Admiralty later drew up this chart to track her movements. Muller even had the audacity to steam into the Indian port of Madras, as a crew member recorded in his diary.
22nd of September 1914, 9:30 p.m. The Emden sneaks closer and fires 125 shots. Some hit boats in the harbour. Huge columns of fire rise above the oil tanks. The coastal defences open fire, but they all fall short. 23rd of September. We are now 100 miles away. We can still see the fires at Madras.
In the City of London, freight rates and shipping insurance rocketed. At one point, the entire British trade fleet in the Bay of Bengal was kept in harbour rather than fall prey to dashing Captain Muller. Germany's rogue cruisers were starting to harm Britain's war effort.
3 transports are delayed in Calcutta through fear of Emden. This involves delaying transport of artillery and cavalry. The Cabinet took a strong view. The extirpation of these pests is a most important subject.
While the Emden ran the British ragged at one end of the Indian Ocean, 25 Royal Navy warships hunted the cruiser Königsberg at the other, off the coast of Germany's East African colony. She had raided Zanzibar and sunk a British light cruiser from her secret hideout in the Rufiji Delta. The frustrated British decided to strangle all her possible bases, starting with the port of Tanga. On the 2nd of November 1914, the British steamed into this bay. In the global war, imperial powers got others to do their fighting. Most of the British troops were Indian. Their arrival was closely watched by Thomas Planton, a 16-year-old African fighting for the Germans.
The approaching British ships had all their lights blazing and seemed to be making no attempt to conceal their presence. We were in position with machine guns, waiting in ambush for them, and many of them were killed when they started to come ashore. A lot of them were killed before they even got out of the water.
Thomas Plantin was one of 2,500 men under German commander Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck. The British thought taking Tanga would be a pushover, but they reckoned without Lettow. He was a professional Prussian soldier, hard as nails, charismatic.
Von Lettow was a remarkable soldier, but stubborn and single-minded to a degree I have fortunately never experienced before. His most remarkable quality was the reckless energy with which he pursued his goals. This was often covered up by his persuasive charm, which he could switch on if he wanted to.
On the ship to Africa, von Lettow had met Karen Blixen, who would later write Out of Africa. He clearly turned on the charm for her.
A German officer, von Lettow, who belongs to a very old Mecklenburger family, has been such a friend to me. You should hear how they talk about him out here, as the greatest genius of the age.
Despite losing men during the landing, the British now threatened Tanga. Governor Schnee ordered Lettow to evacuate the town rather than see it destroyed, but Lettow had come to Africa to fight.
It was crucial to prevent the enemy from gaining a foothold in Tanga, thus giving him a base from which to advance north. I couldn't let the governor's order to spare Tanga take precedence over this priority.
Lettow wrecked the British positions himself on his bicycle. He also called in reinforcements. 3 companies of German troops came by rail to Tanga. Here, on the 4th of November 1914, they met the British Indian soldiers, raw and poorly trained. British intelligence officer Richard Meinertzhagen watched the ensuing rout.
Half the 13th Rajputs turned at once, broke into a rabble and bolted. I could not believe my eyes. They were all jabbering like terrified monkeys and were clearly not for it at any price.
Everyone in the dense forest, friend and foe, was mixed up together, shouting in all sorts of languages. The enemy ran off in wild disorder, and our machine guns mowed down whole companies to the last man.
Von Lettow was based here, at the German hospital. After 2 days of heavy fighting, the British sent Richard Meinertzhagen to negotiate a surrender.
The Germans were kindness itself and gave me a most excellent breakfast, which I sorely needed. We discussed the fight freely as though it had been a football match. It seemed so odd that I should be having a meal today with people whom I was trying to kill yesterday. It seemed so wrong, and made me wonder whether this really was war, or whether we'd all made a ghastly mistake. The German officers were all hard-looking, keen and fit. They treated this war as some new form of sport.
The British failed to take Tanga and suffered 700 casualties. Lettow lost just 65. Germany hailed him as a hero.
A German David is fighting alone against the British Goliath in Africa. If we cannot fight by his side, at least we must make sure that he is well supplied with shot for his sling.
But the British blockade of Germany prevented reinforcements reaching Lettow. Further east, across the Indian Ocean, Muller was still causing havoc. He'd sunk 2 warships and captured 23 merchant ships. On the 9th of November 1914, the Emden anchored at the Cocos Islands to destroy the British wireless station. But the radio operator spotted the Emden's bogus 4th funnel and put out a call for help.